Welcome back to another episode of Sports-Fixx. I'm your host, Carson Becker. We are back talking about another week of college football. Great weekend this past weekend. A couple of very surprising losses from highly ranked teams. We had some other great games from some good teams, and a couple of teams falling out of the AP poll, which was pretty surprising to me at least. I'll talk about all the great games, the AP poll, and we'll obviously start with the AP poll top 25 here. As of this week, we have Ohio State sitting at 1 still. Not a much surprise there. If they continue to win, they should continue to stay in that number 1 spot. Miami, number 2, moving up 1 spot, jumping Oregon. Miami and Oregon flipped this week, so Miami's 2, Oregon is 3. Miami coming off a great win from beating Florida State at home. Or in Florida State. Number 3, Oregon, looking pretty good. They drop 1 spot. They're still looking really good. They beat a good Penn State team in Happy Valley, so looking very good. Don't mind them at 3 at all. Ole Miss at 4 has some great wins. They beat a good LSU team, so they have some great wins. Ole Miss at 4. Texas A&M sitting at 5. They're moving up 1 spot here. Texas A&M has some great wins. Beat a good Notre Dame team, so some great wins for them. Oklahoma moves down 1 spot to 6. They got a tough game coming up here this coming weekend playing Texas, so they're going to have to look for that to be a good win. Not playing with their starting quarterback, John Mateer, so that will be a really interesting game there. Indiana at 7. Indiana has to go to Eugene and play the Oregon Ducks in Oregon. Game day will be in attendance for that one, so look for that to be a really good game. I think Oregon beats them up, but it could be a good game. Alabama moves up 2 spots to 8 after beating Vanderbilt at home. Vanderbilt was 16th in the country during that game, so Alabama's looking really good. Since that loss to Florida State, they've really been on a tear, so great team in Alabama. Texas Tech sitting at 9. They move up 2 spots. They've looked really good this season, 5-0, running the Big 12 as of now. Think they could go on to win the Big 12 if they keep playing like this. So Texas Tech, a very good team that not a lot of people are talking about. 10, Georgia, 4-1, move up 2 spots. Their only loss to Alabama, of course, as we know, at home. That rivalry, they just cannot seem to beat Alabama in those games. So look for them. They still looking really good in the SEC. The SEC always stacked, so it will be tough for them, but with the 1 loss in the SEC. But you will see some other teams in the SEC losing some games, so no worries there for Georgia fans. LSU sitting at 11, 4-1. They move up 2 spots. They've had a great season, only the 1 loss. Tennessee at 12, moving up 3 spots. They had the 1 loss to Georgia, who's 2 spots ahead of them, so pretty good season for them. They've had a great season. Georgia Tech sneaks away with a win, and they're 5-0, move up 4 spots to 13. They've had a pretty good season, a little bit of an up and down season. Not up and down, but they've had some close games that probably shouldn't have been so close. So look for Georgia Tech to stay good. They're running they're in the ACC right now. They're looking like they're the second best team in the ACC, so look for them to maybe be in the ACC championship or something like that. Sitting at 5-0, looking really good. Missouri, 14th in the country, sitting at 5-0, moving up 5 spots. Missouri plays Alabama at home this coming weekend, so that should be a great game. I think Missouri is a great team. Not a lot of people talking about Missouri, but they just keep on winning, keep on chugging along. Should have a great matchup with Alabama this weekend. Michigan sitting at 15, 4-1 on the season. They've had a great season. They only lost to Oklahoma, who is obviously a good team, moving up 5 spots. They've just kind of pushed along as well, winning the games they need to win. Notre Dame sitting at 16. They're still in the ranking at 3-2. We saw 2 teams drop out of the ranking after losing. Like Penn State team and a Texas team. Both dropped out of the ranking. But yet we still have this 3-2 Notre Dame team sitting in here. I know they have 2 great losses by like 4 combined points or whatever it is. I get that. But no other team, you're not seeing another team in here. Okay, Florida State is 3-2 and sitting at 25. But again, another team that probably shouldn't be in the ranking either. So, but they did just win. So I guess you got to give it to them. And that, but you're not seeing another team this high. You haven't seen a team at 16 this high that's 3-2 in forever. So I still don't get that, especially after they dropped 2 pretty good teams that had some bad losses. this weekend, so I'm very surprised that they're still moving up. They're 16. I mean, they're right back in the playoff race. They could still get in if they went out now. So I don't get it. But Illinois is behind them at 5-1. They're at 17. BYU at 18 is 5-0. They're behind Notre Dame. UVA at 5-1 at 19. They beat the Florida State team. That's now 25. Vanderbilt at 5-1 dropped 4 spots. They were 16 after the loss to Alabama in Tuscaloosa. They played a really good first half. Had the game tied going into halftime, and then in the second half, Alabama's defense just stepped it up, and their offense kept doing what they were doing, and it ended up being kind of a blowout. So maybe not Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt's best game, but they still played pretty well in the first half. So I'll give it to them. Arizona State's sitting at 21. They moved up 4 spots. They're 4-1. Another team in the Big 12 that could be very good. Iowa State 22. I was thinking Iowa State was going to be maybe the team to beat in the Big 12 at the beginning of the season, but after the tough loss this past weekend, and now 5-1, they drop 8 spots. Memphis at 6-0. They were not ranked. They are now ranked. USF back into the rankings at 4-1, jump ahead of Florida State. So Florida State at 25 at 3-2. They dropped 7 spots after their loss to Miami. So not a terrible AP poll. Big surprises to me is obviously what everybody is kind of talking about here. It's Texas dropping out, and it's Penn State dropping out. Those 2 teams dropping out of the rankings is still a little bit of a surprise. To me, I think the bigger surprise is Texas dropping out of the rankings. Now, I know Texas, they haven't really played anybody. They lost to Ohio State and now have lost to Florida. But Florida has now, before this game, I think they played 3 top 25 ranked teams. So they were 1-3, but they had losses to top 25 teams. So their record did not show how good they were. And their one bad loss to USF, you probably count it as kind of a fluke game where they just didn't play how they should have, and it was kind of okay, like they lost, but it wasn't really that bad of a loss. Very surprised Texas drops all the way out. I know they haven't beaten anybody, and they'll probably be back once they beat somebody. Maybe if they beat Oklahoma this coming weekend, they'll probably be back. So I think Texas dropping out was a little bit of a surprise. That's a very far drop. Texas going from 9 to unranked. So very big surprise. Penn State losing to UCLA, giving up 42 points. Maybe not as much of a surprise, but they did play Oregon really well at home. They were 7th in the country, so they were still pretty good. They didn't have a great win. They didn't have a good win either, so I understand that. But dropping them all the way out, if you're gonna drop both of them all the way out from 7 and 9, how is Notre Dame still at 16? I know Notre Dame has 2 great losses. I get it. They have 2 great losses, but I mean, these teams, they have 1 bad loss at this point. And Texas, maybe, I mean, Florida's probably not, Florida, their record looks bad, but they're really not as bad as, DJ Lagway played a great game in this game, and so that was really what was holding Florida back. I don't get it. I don't get dropping them all the way out of the rankings. I know they don't have a great win, and now they have bad losses, but it's a little crazy to me that they dropped all the way out of the rankings, and Notre Dame stays in at 3-2, even though they have 2 great losses. They don't have a good win either. So that's my little rant on the AP poll after this week. It's a little bit surprising to me, but speaking of Texas, I got another trivia question here for you guys today. This is a tough one. Not expecting many people to get this, if anybody, but when was the last time the preseason number 1 team in the AP poll, so that would be Texas, the AP poll, preseason AP poll, dropped out of the top 25 during the season? During the same season they were preseason number 1, when's the last time they dropped out of the top 25? I'll give you a couple seconds here to answer. You can pause the video if you need more time. I'll also give you a hint here, which should maybe help a little bit, but we'll see. Here we go. Your hint is it was back in 2012. This team was preseason number 1 and dropped out of the rankings. Give you a couple more seconds to answer. Pause the video if you need more time. The answer is USC. In 2012 was a preseason number 1 overall team in the AP poll, and they dropped all the way out of the rankings during that season. So USC and now Texas are actually, there's 3 in like 1950, I believe it was Notre Dame was a preseason number 1 team that dropped out of the ranking. So there's only been 3 teams ever to be preseason number 1 team and drop out of the rankings during that season. And this is the first time we have ever had the number 1 and number 2 preseason AP teams drop out of the rankings during the same season. So, a little bit of trivia there. Tell me in the comments if you got the answer correct before I said it. Don't cheat. And so if anybody got that, that's good on you. That's a tough one. USC 2012. They were a lot better that back then. So good on you if you got that one. So now we'll go into all the games that happened this past weekend, starting off in the ACC. 24 ranked Virginia taking on Louisville. Louisville looked good in this one. QB going for over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns. Very back and forth game. You thought Louisville was going to pull this one out, but turnovers killed Louisville in this one. They had 2, a pick and a fumble, which kept UVA in the game, kept it close. Ended up in overtime. Louisville makes a field goal in with their first possession, and then a 2-yard run from UVA lifted them to the win. UVA wins in overtime, 30-27. Great game there. Virginia continues to win. They continue to pull out wins. They had the great win against Florida State last week. This past weekend, they beat a good Louisville team on the road, in which they were underdogs in that game by like 8.5 or something like that. So a great game there. UVA continues to win, staying in the rankings for now. So good on UVA and the ACC. We next will go to the Big 12. Number 14 ranked Iowa State going into Cincinnati. Cincinnati favored in this one, which came to the surprise of many. Cincinnati jumped out to an early 17-0 lead, and people were thinking that maybe that spread was very much correct, and Iowa State was not the pick to take, the team to take in this one. Iowa State fights back in this one. A lot of yards, a lot of points in this one. Both teams went for over 400 yards in this one. Rocco Beck threw for 300 yards by himself and 2 touchdowns in this one. But Cincinnati's quarterback, he threw for 200 yards, 2 touchdowns in this one, and their running back ran for over 100 yards and 2 more touchdowns as Cincinnati takes this one 38-30, taking down the 14th ranked Cyclones at home. Cincinnati with a huge win over Iowa State, and Iowa State falls in this one, looking like one of the teams to beat in the Big 12. Now might be a little questionable in the Big 12, looking like Texas Tech is going to run that conference as of now. So watch out for Texas Tech. Iowa State will look to bounce back. Next, we'll go to the SEC for a great matchup. 9th-ranked Texas Longhorns take on the Florida Gators. Florida had a little bit of a disappointing year so far. They got the loss to USF early and then continued to lose after that, losing to Miami, and they've lost like 3 straight games to top 25 teams. But DJ Lagway looks a lot better in this one, throwing for almost 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, he threw for 298 yards. Arch Manning with another disappointing start in this one, had another tough environment to go into. You got to think this is still his first year of starting. He doesn't have very many games under his belt, going into a tough Gainesville environment here. Goes for 263 yards, 2 touchdowns, but 2 picks hurts Texas in this one. Another reason Texas is struggling in these games is Arch Manning is having to do it all. He has to pass the ball. He leads the team in rushing yards this game, carried the ball 15 times, which is double the amount any other running back got the ball. So they're not running the ball well. They're not running the ball a lot. He had 37 yards, so he's not running the ball well either. Only getting 2-point-something yards per carry at this point, so they're not running the ball well. He's struggling in the passing game because he's having to pass probably 40 times a game. So I think they really need to get the run game going if they want to take some of that pressure off of Arch, give themselves a better chance. But Florida will win this one 29-21, taking down the Longhorns at home. Florida gets a much-needed win right here, pushing them back to 3 or 1 2-3, I'm sorry, record on the season. Texas falls all the way out of the rankings, like I said earlier. Little bit of a surprise to me there. That's a very far drop, so a little surprised, but Texas loses. They'll bounce back. They now have 2 losses, one to Ohio State and now one to Florida, who is unranked. So they do have one good loss, one bad loss, and not really a great win. So I get that they're not in the ranking, but it's still a little bit of a surprise to me that they dropped all the way out. And now for the other surprising game this past weekend, Penn State going all the way to California for a Big Ten matchup against UCLA. Make it make sense. I don't know how you put a California team. I'm in the Big Ten, whatever. It's like a Midwest conference, but whatever. We'll talk about it. It still doesn't make sense to me, but UCLA in this one, they looked a lot better than they have all year. They had not led all season coming into this one, so you're not expecting much from UCLA. Penn State closed at 24.5-point favorites in this one. They have the one loss to Oregon where they played really well. They just lost at the end. Drew Aller throws a pick at home in a great game that went into overtime. So you're expecting Penn State kind of just run away with this one. Drew Aller threw for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. But they struggled to run the ball with Aller. They struggled to run the ball with Aller leading them with 78 rushing yards in this one. Nico finally had a great game, looked more like the guy we saw at Tennessee, threw for 166 yards and 2 touchdowns, but he also went for 3 rushing touchdowns and 128 yards on the ground in this one. UCLA led by as many as 20 in this one, and they get the win for another surprising upset. The UCLA Bruins get the win, 42-37 at home. Great game for them. They have a great win, and they really prove that they can play. They really can play, and they can keep up with some of these good teams. Penn State falls all the way out of the rankings, as we know, and they still don't have a great win on their record, on their season. So maybe not as much of a surprise for them to fall out. Next, we go to the ACC for a top 25 matchup. 3rd-ranked Miami Hurricanes versus the 18th-ranked Florida State Seminoles. Carson Beck with another great game, throwing for 4 touchdowns. And he is very high in the Heisman race as he continues to play at a very high level. I think he maybe should be maybe the front runner at this point, as he's played some good teams and had some great games against some good teams. So he's very high up there still as well. I know Ty Simpson just jumped pretty high up there as well now that he's played 2 great games back-to-back. So Heisman race is definitely getting a lot closer. But Tommy Castellanos threw for 272 yards and 2 touchdowns. He did have 2 picks, which definitely hurt Florida State in this one. Miami wins and advances to 5-0 and 1-0 in the ACC. They hand Florida State their 2nd loss of the season. Of course, their other loss was to UVA and at UVA. So Miami looking very good this season. One thing about Miami is they haven't left the state of Florida yet, and they won't leave the state of Florida until November 1st when they play SMU. I think that's crazy that they haven't even left the state of Florida, and they've played every single Florida team that's good basically this year. So it's kind of crazy to me that they haven't left the state of Florida. But there you go. They won't leave until November, so look for them. They still have a month left in the state of Florida, so good for them. But they are winning games and beating good teams, so. Finally, we have the game of the week. Game day in attendance in this one. We head to Tuscaloosa for an SEC matchup. A lot of people talking about it after what happened last year. Bama fans still had the bad taste in their mouth. 16th ranked Vanderbilt faces 10th ranked Alabama. As we all know, Vanderbilt beats them in Nashville last year, so obviously the game was getting a lot of hype around it. Diego Pavia, Vanderbilt kept the game close in the first half, scoring a couple touchdowns. This game ended up tied at halftime, 14-14, but Ty Simpson with another great game, throwing for 340 yards and 2 touchdowns in this one. Jam Miller went for 136 yards and a touchdown. Alabama held Vanderbilt scoreless in the second half, winning this one 30-14, getting another impressive win and pushing their record to 4-1, 2-0 in the SEC. It's looking like this Alabama team is kind of back to what we're used to seeing, where they're beating teams that they should beat. They're not losing games that they shouldn't lose, and it's looking like they could be back to where we expected them to be this season, especially after that loss to Florida State. You really knew they had to bounce back if they wanted to be a good team this year, and I think they have definitely done that. So, great win for them at home. They'll have to go take on a tough Missouri team on the road this coming weekend, so look for that. Another great, tough game for Alabama. But that is all the games I would talk about in this episode. Like always, if you are enjoying these videos, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. I'm Carson Becker, and I will see you next time.